Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachare Yamuna Tira Vanachare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Shri Radha Govinda Deva Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Taking this one. Oh, this is a nice drum. It's a nice drum. That's it. It's the difference. Power of protection. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Angsha Shaktya Vesha Rupe Dvividhavatara. Angsha Shaktya Vesha Rupe Dvividhavatara. Bhalya Bhoganda Dharma Dvaita Prakara. Bhalya Bhoganda Dharma Dvaita Prakara. Angsha Shakta Vesha Rupe Dvividhavatara. Bhalya Bhoganda Dharma Dvaita Prakara.
Shakta Vesharupe Dvivadavatar
Shakya Vesharupe Dvividavatara
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakar
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara Amsha Shakya Vesharupe Dvividavatara
Amsha Shakta Vesharupe Dvivadavatar
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara
Amsha Shakta Vesharupe Dvivadavatara Amsha Shakta Vesharupe Dvivadavatara Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara.
Ladies.
Amsha Shakya Vesharupe Dvividavatara
Amsha Shakya Vesharupe Dvividavatara
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara
Amsha Shakya Vesharupe Dvividavatara
Balya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara
Angsha of the plenary expansion. Shakti Avesha of the empowered. Rupe in the forms. Dvivida, two kinds. Avatara, incarnations. Bhalya, childhood. Poganda, boyhood. Dharma, characteristics of age. Dui, two. Ta, certainly. Prakara, kinds. His incarnations are of two kinds, namely partial and empowered, and he appears in two ages, childhood and boyhood. Purport. The Vilas forms are 6 in number. Incarnations are of two varieties, namely Shakti Avesha, empowered, and Angsavesha, partial. These incarnations also come within the category of Prabhava and Vaibhava manifestations. Childhood and boyhood are two special features of the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, but his permanent feature is his eternal form as an adolescent youth. The original personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, is always worshipped in his eternal adolescent form. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swavadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Tam Tadayam Vadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishware Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Angsha Shakta Vesharupai Dvivitavatara Bhalya Poganda Dharma Dvita Prakara. His incarnations are of two kinds, namely partial and empowered, and he appears in two ages, childhood and boyhood. So we are in the second chapter of the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, wherein we are just getting started, in one sense, with the introduction, before we get into the pastimes and the stories of Lord Chaitanya, we are first being properly educated into the science of the personalities themselves. So the first 7 chapters of the Caitanya-caritāmṛta is all firstly setting the scene for understanding who exactly are the personalities that make up the Caitanya-caritāmṛta. Because to a large part, the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, if you don't understand who the personalities are, you will completely miss the significance of the stories. If you look, for example, at the Mahabharata, many people do not understand exactly who is Krishna. But the Mahabharata is very amazing because externally of what it was. So many people who died, such big warriors, so much fighting, so much politics, so much intrigue. And we see that even in Krishna's time himself, it was still a little unclear who exactly is Krishna. Is he just an amazing personality? Agreed, he was very powerful, but who exactly was he? And we saw that when Krishna went to make just before the war, if you read the Mahabharata, you'll see that so many attempts were made to stop the war, to see if they can make peace. So many times, in different ways. They were trying to avoid it. Krishna really set that example. And we see that at the very last time, Krishna made a final attempt. And then he and Satyaki, so Satyaki was Krishna's very dear friend and a very intimate commander of his, of the Yadu dynasty. And he and Satyaki, just the two of them, they went alone to Duryodhana's palace to see if they can organize a peace. And they went there, and when they sat there, and they were trying to now see if they can convince Duryodhana to avoid the war. And but when Duryodhana heard that Krishna is coming alone, unarmed, then he thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to neutralize Krishna. I can catch him and just imprison him, and then at least there's one less problem. Because Duryodhana was very much set on this war. He was not, in one sense, Krishna was wasting his time. But he wanted to, and Krishna knew he was wasting his time, but he wanted to just at least show that he made an attempt to stop the war, so that in the future people cannot say that it was very clear who was behind it. So Duryodhana thought, well, this is a great opportunity for me to capture Krishna and imprison him, and then I don't have to worry about him during the war. And then when they sat there, and at some point they were speaking, and Krishna got also very heavy, telling Arjuna very clearly, Duryodhana very clearly what a fool he is. And then at that point, Duryodhana, he just gave the order. He said, okay, now let's get them, let's catch them, now we're going to arrest you. And when Satyaki saw what was happening, he pulled out his sword and he was ready to fight everyone alone. And there's this very famous painting where you see this moment where Krishna is sitting and Satyaki has his sword drawn, and Krishna grabs him by the arm. Krishna tells him, no, it's okay, I'll take care of this. And at that point, Krishna revealed his universal form. A universal form he showed there, and it was quite terrifying. And he basically told Duryodhana, told him who I am, really. What are you doing, fighting against me? Told him that you're finished. And then at the end, everybody was so shocked, and then Krishna just put back his universal form, he stood up, and then he said, okay, well, I think you've made your choice here, it's very clear, and then he left. And as he left, Duryodhana was thinking, and at that point he was thinking, God, maybe he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by the time he left, he was thinking, no, he's just some powerful yogi or some mystical power. So even in Krishna's time, it was unclear who Krishna was. But we see that the Mahabharata is still very interesting, very powerful. Now the CC is a little different, because in the CC, there's no big wars, there's no huge intrigues and politics, a little bit, but not on that scale of the Mahabharata. And on the CC, to a large part, they just basically, the devotees just come together and they do kirtan and they take a lot of prasadam. And that's more or less what's happening on an external level. If you tell someone the story of the CC, they say, oh, what happens in the CC? Well, the Chaitanya, they sort of, they just do a lot of kirtan and they're in Jagannath Puri and they go swim in the beach. And there's some drama between the devotees, that definitely comes out, some drama. But otherwise, it's difficult for people to really see, well, what's the plot line, what's the excitement? Oh, Lord Chaitanya is very ecstatic. He cries a lot when he does kirtan and chants. So for a materialistic person, it's difficult to understand what exactly is the story. But if you understand who the personalities are, then you understand that if you understand that deeper level, it's essential to understand what really is happening here and how amazing it is. Yeah? Similarly, imagine one day you see there's someone sitting there, there's an old man. He's sitting here, he comes for a class one day, sits there and he chops vegetables. And he just sits there and he chops the vegetables and he's just sitting and hearing the class, and then he leaves. But the devotees are all excited and they couldn't believe what just happened. And someone else said, what? It was just a guy who was sitting there, and then you find out, oh, actually, it's President Trump or President Biden, whoever you want to say, some famous person. He came into the temple and he said, oh, can I do some service? And he just chopped some vegetables and he did something and then he left. It would be a big story and it'd be huge. But externally, what happened? It wasn't too exciting. It was just chopping some vegetables and attending the temple event. But it's because of who the person is that you understand how amazing this reality is, that what just happened. It's a huge, big event because of who the person is. So similarly in the CC, the beginning was all about trying to explain to us who these personalities are. Because the deeper you really understand who Lord Chaitanya is, who Lord Nityananda is, who Advaita Acharya is, and of what cosmic significance these personalities are, and then you read the CC and you approach it like that, then you can really understand that there are very amazing things happening in the CC. And there are very amazing examples being set and amazing teachings being done. But one has to first understand who exactly the personalities are. So that's what's happening in this first 7 chapters. A huge, first explaining the reasons for why Krishna appeared as Lord Chaitanya, then going through the various personalities, explaining who is Lord Nityananda, who is Advaita Acharya, and not just explaining it on the basis of reasoning, but also a lot of references. And that is a big part of the CC. In reading the CC, you will see that there will be points that will be made, and then there will be a ton of verses substantiating the points. And you have to get used to reading the CC like that. It's not like in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam doesn't quote other scriptures. It is just the Bhagavatam. It's the Bhagavatam and some rishi is speaking and is making his point and there's a ton of verses. But in the CC, there will be the verses, and then I don't know the amount of times the Bhagavatam is quoted. I think it's a few hundred, like 300 or 400 times the Bhagavatam is quoted in the CC. So therefore, when you read the CC, you have to also understand this is what's happening. There's going to be a lot of other verses that are substantiating the points being made, because the Caitanya-caritāmṛta is an extension of the Vedas. It's built on the Vedic scriptures and Vedic literatures, and showing how it's, in one sense, the fulfillment of a lot of Vedic literature, and that is very much based on that. So it takes a little time to get used to reading it, because it is a storybook. It's a story, but it is also philosophy, and philosophy with a lot of references. And that's what happens a lot here in the beginning of this book. Now in this section we see there's a very intricate understanding then that is being communicated, and it's in a few parts. Like in the beginning it's here, and we'll see also later when Lord Chaitanya meets Sanatana Goswami and he gives his teachings to Sanatana Goswami. And we'll see that Lord Chaitanya gives at one point the teachings to Rupa Goswami and then the teachings to Sanatana Goswami, and it's very different. He's teaching them, in one sense it's the same, the essence is the same, but he is focusing on 2 different aspects. And to Sanatana Goswami, he teaches a lot about the science of the avatars, and the various avatars and the various manifestations that Krishna have within this world. And it gets a little technical, the Prabhav, the Vaibhav, the Vilas, the Angsha, the Shakti Avesh, and it's like all these terms. But one has to understand it's very important, these avatars, because understanding the avatars are essential for so many aspects of devotional service, rests on the Supreme or Divine or Krishna, who somehow enters into this world. if Krishna does not enter into this world in one way or another, how will we connect with Krishna? We see that in Christianity, for example, if we look at the history of the Western world, you see that there was a certain point in history when people had deep faith in God's appearance and involvement in this world. People had so much faith that their prayers could be answered, and God will intervene, and people would do so many things. I remember even when I was growing up, I grew up in a town that was very agricultural. It was all farmers. And every year, the whole town would gather to pray for rain. That's just what you did. Like, everybody understood you need rain, and if God's not going to send the rain, then everything is finished. And the whole time, everybody understood, no, we have to pray for rain. So they would, at the school and at the church, there would be big events, and then there's everybody's praying for rain. So at a certain point in history, the people had this idea that, yes, God is involved. It's not that God is somewhere separate. He is involved in our life here, and we depend on the mercy of God in this world, even in what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. It is God who gives us life, God who supplies what we need, and God can intervene. And you see it in all kinds of ways. We would pray for rain, and if there was a big sports event, then people would pray for victory also. And it's interesting because both sides are praying for victory, so it's interesting how that works. But now we see, with time, what has happened as the world has become more industrial. You see that people don't really pray so much. Not that even sometimes people believe in God, but even the people who believe in God don't really have this idea so much anymore that God is present and God is involved. And we see that as atheism, people don't come to atheism. It's not that you have full-fledged theism and strong faith, and then the next day people just become atheists. There's a gradual change where people go from really pious, God-fearing into complete secular atheists. There's a whole bunch of steps that happen in between. And it's interesting now, if we look at India, you'll see how India is undergoing that very quickly. Because as India is industrializing, they are, in one sense, going through the same cycle that has been happening in the West, but in a much quicker time. Just like in India, you say 60 years ago, many places were completely unindustrialized, still completely agrarian, people were growing food. And now, 60 years later, those people are, the children of those people, they are IT engineers, and there's like and everybody's living in Bangalore and here, and it's just happening very quickly. But with a lot of that, it's not just a change of your job and how you make your money, but it is a change of faith and understanding. And we see that's very happening in India a lot now. How you're also going through the steps now. And there's this interesting interim step between like proper theism, like really being a devotee at heart, and being an atheist, or really relinquishing any faith in God. And there's this interim step what they call it, instead of theism, they call it deism. So deism is the belief that you still believe in God, but the idea is that God created this world, and then He just completely left the world alone, and He doesn't interfere in the world anymore. And all that's happening in the world is just the laws of nature, the laws of science. That's all there is. It's just science. There is a God, yes, we agree that God is ultimately responsible for the world, but now there's no more God. There's no miracles, there's no incarnations, there's no appearances, there's nothing in this world. There's just the laws of nature, the science. And that's all that there is. And all this other stuff is just superstitious, and there's no point in really praying to God to interfere in the world, because He doesn't involve anymore. It's just the laws are just set up, and then He is distant from the world. But that understanding is very, very far away from Vaishnavism, from the Vaishnava understanding, and one could say from the proper understanding of what's happening in this world, and the devotee's vision in seeing how much the Lord is involved. So the knowledge of the avatars are essential because they are basically explaining to us the various ways in which God appears within this world and interferes and is present. There's the spiritual energy and there's the material world, and the material world is very dark. It is dark and it is limited and it is temporary, and it is a completely other kind of, contrary kind of energy to the spiritual energy. But it's not the only story. Because the spiritual energy comes down, descends in various ways. And God personally appears in this world in many forms. And we see that then a lot of our practices are all related to this. The holy name of the Lord is an avatar, it is an appearance of the Lord. And if you don't have faith that the holy name is not just an ordinary material syllables, but it is a manifestation of the divine, how can you take shelter of the holy name? And that is what makes the holy name so amazing, is that it is something spiritual that is descended from another world into this world, but it's very much here. It's very much here. It's present with us, and it is something we can connect to. Similarly, the deities, now we are at this point where we can serve the deities and they're present before us, but there is a deep philosophy and a deep theology behind how exactly it is that the Lord appears within these deities. So we will see a lot of the avatar tattva is developed in the tantras, and the Sattvata Tantra, for example, one of the main Vaishnava tantras. And the tantras have all to do with ritual or doing things. Tantra literally means to do things. So a lot of the other tantras are the black tantras, which is like witchcraft and magic, so all kinds of ways that people want to influence the world through various rituals and spells. But the Vaishnava Tantra is what? Is deity worship. That is our magic. That is the Vaishnava magic. That's something very magical. That you have somehow, you do something with physical stuff, but the result is what? Is spiritual. The result is the descending of spiritual energy, the purification of the heart, the enlightenment of knowledge. So many, you are in one sense doing a ritual, just like some people, they invoke demons. Like the witches and the wizards, what do? They do spells. And a big part of wizardry, one big branch of wizardry is invocation, where you try to invoke certain demons, or invoke certain spirits. You call them in. But the devotee, his witchcraft is invoking the Supreme Lord. That's what we want to do. We have a whole big prana pratishta ceremony in which we now we beg the Lord to please descend and become present in this deity form so that now we can worship you. So it is the mode of goodness, or not the mode of goodness, but transcendental tantra. So, but a large part of the tantras have to do with understanding how exactly do the Lord appear within this world? What's the science behind that? Now, many of us, we are just, we're simple and we just do it, but it's the same as technology. If you look at the iPhone, we use the iPhone, we're users, and it's amazing, but there's a lot of intelligence that goes behind what exactly is happening inside that thing. It's not so simple. It's actually very complicated. You don't necessarily know everything. You don't know yourself what exactly is behind there, but someone does. Someone knows what's happening there, and that's what makes the whole thing possible. So similarly, the tantras, they explain to us the very complicated, intricate workings of how God appears within this world so that he can actually become present within these various forms. And similarly, the avatars then who come and perform pastimes in this world are just as essential, because we are designed to hear stories. That's what humans, it's so interesting that people are so obsessed about their own life, but what most people do is they actually have some job and whatever, and it's very difficult, and then their actual happiness in life is in watching movies. Watching movies. It's not really their own life. Their actual happiness in life is in becoming absorbed in some other story, and that's why they make so much money. So much money is made from basically a bunch of people just making believe on a screen, and that's what people love. But as devotees, what are we going to do? We also love that, isn't it? Do you like watching movies? What can we say? It's very interesting. We need it. Sometimes you just need to hear about, we are designed to hear about other people. So therefore, the incarnations are essential, because now we have the capacity to channel that desire that we have to hear amazing stories and Līlā into the activities of the Lord. Therefore he descends into this world, not for his sake. There's nothing for him here. It's like, going to a third world country or some, God-forsaken place. What are you going to, you don't go there for fun. You go there, he comes here not for his own pleasure, but he comes here to do certain activities So that now we can speak about it. Now the devotees can hear about it and study it and think about it and remember everything that he has done. But it is important to then understand that it is because it is the activities of God, that's what makes it so purifying. So Prabhupada makes it very clear, like the Mahabharata, the reason the Mahabharata is purifying is not because of the good moral lessons or this or this. It is because Krishna is involved. Therefore it becomes spiritual. Therefore it becomes something enlivening. And therefore it becomes purifying to the heart and to the mind. Even though there's so much political intrigue and all these things. So again, it is all these principles of divinity that manifest in all these various ways. And it is essential to this movement. And that faith is essential because it is that faith that gives us access to be able to experience how Krishna appears within this world in these various forms. Whether it's through the holy name, through deity worship, or through the Bhagavat. And the Bhagavatam then deals with two things, with the devotees of the Lord and with the Lord himself and what they have done. So one has to understand that this is not normal. This is something extraordinary. So that's what we see here in the first 7 chapters, explaining to us all these the realities of the personalities, and then a deep understanding of the different avatars and how they appear and the technicalities of how it all comes together. And we see in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, which is written by Rupa Goswami, there in the whole science of the avatars very intricately explained, very systematically listed out. It's quite an interesting book. And again, a lot of the stuff, the beginning, the technical terms can sometimes takes a little getting used to, but if you just take a little time, it's not that complicated. I mean, we all can do mathematics, you know. Well, my wife can't really do mathematics, but most people can do mathematics. And, you know, we all go through school, so we've learned so many technical things. But, so taking a little time to understand the technicalities of the CC, of these avatars, is really powerful. Because what it does is, it strengthens your faith. It strengthens your faith in understanding, like, how is Lord Jagannath present there? How is Radha Govinda present there in that deity form? It means your intelligence gets behind it, your faith gets strengthened, not just by belief, but by understanding. And same thing with then understanding the appearances of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. So, amazing. So, I'm going to just read a few more verses here because I think we only do the CC once a week. And if you only do one verse a week, it's going to take us probably around 100 years to get through the CC. I don't know how long it would take, but there's a lot of verses here. I just want to read a few more verses because they're actually all much shorter and we can get a little more done here. So I'm just going to read the English. The personality of God at Shri Krishna, who is eternally an adolescent, is the primeval Lord, the source of all incarnations. He expands himself in these 6 categories of forms to establish his supremacy throughout the universe. In these 6 kinds of forms, there are innumerable varieties. Although there are many, they are all one. There is no difference between them. Purport. The personality of Godhead manifests himself in 6 different features: Prabhav, Vaibhav, empowered incarnations, partial incarnations, childhood, and boyhood. The personality of God at Shri Krishna, whose permanent feature is adolescence, enjoys his transcendental proclivities by performing pastimes in these 6 forms. In these 6 features, there are unlimited divisions of the personality of Godhead's forms. The jivas, or living beings, are differentiated parts and parcels of the Lord. They are all diversities of the one without the second, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 101. The Chit Shakti, which is also called Swarup Shakti or Antaranga Shakti, displays many varied manifestations. It sustains the kingdom of God and its paraphernalia. The external energy, called Maya Shakti, is the cause of innumerable universes with varied material potencies. And the marginal potency, which is between these two, consists of the numberless living beings. These are the 3 principal energies which have unlimited categories and subdivisions. Purport. The internal potency of the Lord, which is called Chit Shakti or Antaranga Shakti, exhibits variegatedness in the transcendental Vaikuntha cosmos. Besides ourselves, there are unlimited numbers of liberated living beings who associate with the personality of Godhead in its innumerable features. The material cosmos displays the external energy in which the conditioned living beings are provided all liberty to go back to the personality of Godhead after leaving the material tabernacle. The Shvetasvatara Upanishad informs us, Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate, natat samaschab yadikas cha drishyate, parasya shaktir vividai vishruyate, swabhaviki jnana balakriya cha. The Supreme Lord is one without a second. He has nothing to do personally, nor does he have material senses. No one is equal to him or greater than him. He has unlimited, variegated potencies of different names, which exist within him as autonomous attributes and provide him full knowledge, power, and pastimes. These are the principal manifestations and expansions of the personality of Godhead and his three energies. They are all emanations from Sri Krishna, the Transcendence. They have their existence in him. Okay, so Krishna expanding then on this philosophy of the Shaktis, so the three various energies of the Lord. And again, that is also part of the science of Krishna. There is the science of the incarnations, and then there is the science of the Shaktis, of the energies. And these energies are just as much part of Krishna as he himself, but in one sense, again, separate from him. So those three kinds of energies, the spiritual energy, and the material energy, and then the jiva in between, as something that, as an energy that can either go to the left or go to the right. It can be part of the material world, part of the spiritual world. And everything that exists forms part of these three energies, and one of these three energies. Now, we see that the next section, what's coming up here, is that we will see that Krishnadas Kaviraj is now going to start making the point of first establishing that Krishna is that supreme. That Krishna is not just an ordinary incarnation, but is the sum and bonum of all incarnations. So is first establishing the supremacy of Krishna, and then saying that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. So amazing how the CC then is fascinating, because it is in one sense giving us everything. It's not just giving Lord Chaitanya, but it's giving everything that comes before, the whole basis of how it all comes together. And we see in the Gaudiya Math, for example, people who would join, they would first read the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, and then you would read the Bhagavatam, because the idea was that the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, everything is in there. But that is if you are from Bengal and you're sort of used to you know about Lord Chaitanya. Whereas for us, we first have to learn about Krishna, because we don't know anything. And if you don't really understand Krishna, it's going to be very difficult to understand how Lord Chaitanya fits into the picture. But it is interesting. It's important for us to make that connection with Lord Chaitanya, and to see how much of our movement, even though our movement is externally very Krishna-centered, we're the society of Krishna consciousness, and Krishna is sort of at the core of what we do, but to see how, in practice, how much we are connected with Lord Chaitanya. And it's not just the movement of Krishna, but it is really the movement of Lord Chaitanya as well. So making that connection with Lord Chaitanya is essential for all of us, both in practice and also just as an identity, seeing that the role that Lord Chaitanya plays in our life every day. And I think that's the key thing that we really can take away from understanding this avatar kata and the philosophy of how the Lord appears within this world. We see that then the Lord is extremely present. And that is really the vision of the devotee. It's essential. That is what gives life in this world some meaning and also some magic. Remember one time a person who was getting into Krishna consciousness, and she was a student, and she got into it for a while, and then she pulled back and she did other stuff. But then one day she came, maybe after a year or something later, she came back again. And she came back and she was at a class again, and then at some point she started crying. And she said that, at the end she asked the question, she says, where is the magic? She said that when she first got into Krishna consciousness, there was so much magic. It was the magic of Krishna consciousness. It's like you start seeing the world and you're seeing just how amazing everything is, how God is present here and how the devotees are amazing and how you do these things that are just so of such significant value. Chanting Hare Krishna, it's going to liberate you from birth and death. And worshipping the deities is like worshipping the Supreme Lord. But then, if you cannot keep your consciousness pure, if you cannot stay connected to the process, that magic will be taken away. And then you can go back and just, be a normal person again. But there will be no magic. That's the one thing to understand. In the material world, in the absence of making that contact with the spiritual energy, all that you have is what? You just have material energy. And the material energy can give you a lot of stuff, and you can maybe get some success, or you can get some money, and whatever else you want to have. But it is not magical. There's no magic there. It is just mundane. Mundane. There's a qualitative thing that is missing there. So Krishna consciousness is about understanding the magic of connecting with the divine in your life, and seeing how God is involved in your life, and seeing how dependent we are on the mercy of God, and seeing how God directs us to everything that happens to us, seeing the hand of God personally involved, pushing you in a specific way, trying to figure out what is it that Krishna wants from me? How does Krishna want me to react to these situations? And that is what it adds, this level of depth to your life that nothing can get to. And that is all part of understanding the reality of how God is present in the world and not distant. And that is the magic of Krishna consciousness. And that magic is also scientific. It is not just resting on sentiment, but it is resting on a deep science. Because it is very dangerous. It is dangerous when we start speaking of God being in this world. Because the conditioned living entity can very easily get confused. Because you also meet people that say that, oh, this is God. God is telling me to do this, or God is telling me to do that, or this is the divine will, and then things can get very weird, very quickly. And we have personally seen that. In the Hare Krishna movement also, we experience that sometimes. When the belief in God is not formed or following the philosophy and the tattva, and properly following the tradition to help us guide us understanding what is the will of God, then it can also get very dangerous, and things can get very crazy. So the magic combined with the proper understanding is what will really set us up to be connected to Krishna in a very significant way and in a very sustainable way. And that we increasingly, as life goes by, we see the magic increases more and more. And as our faith increases in the process of Krishna consciousness, that faith increases simply by understanding more and more about how God is really present here. Same with the holy name and worshipping the deity. That's what it really means. As you become advanced and you deepen in your practice, all that really happens is you really start to realize how much Krishna is actually present here. And as you realize the presence of Krishna, then everything else comes from that. So amazing actually to see how the two things come together. The science of the avatars and our daily practices in spiritual life, and even then just understanding how much, even in our material life, Prabhupada says that even in ordinary material dealings, the devotee prays to the Lord. Because the devotee understands that the material energy is just like a big ocean. It's like a big ocean, and you are like on a little boat in the ocean. And what can you do against the ocean? If you're on a little boat, you can't really do much. The only thing we can do is we are basically dependent on the mercy of the ocean. So Prabhupada explains that therefore the devotee, even in his ordinary life, even in his mundane life, quote unquote, his material life, even there, the devotee prays and he knows God is present there as well. So we should not take it for granted. It's amazing to have this vision in a world in which many people are now being systematically conditioned and not believing this, and in breaking that down. And we see now in places like India such a concerted effort being made to try to convince people otherwise. So amazing that we are connected to that, and the Caitanya-caritāmṛta takes that, develops it further, and it really is a magical book. So let's hear any questions or comments on anything that was looked at today. So we looked at the avatars or anything related to the CC. Yes, Natabar Garanga.
Krishna, I know last good to hear from you, good to see you. Please come more, so we can be more happy. And I know that you dabble in Sanskrit a little bit, so maybe you can help us out. I always get confused about what maybe you do too, what the difference between, and how to keep them separate, what Vaibhav and Prabhav avatars, because it was talking about the different avatars, and it was kind of probably before you were reading that section.
Before, yeah.
But I don't know if you remember the Sanskrit, what that would...
Let's see quickly, because I always get confused with the Vaibhav, the Prabhav, and the Vilas.
Yeah, in the Vilas, the Hari Vilas.
So, I mean, I think so. So practically, I can't remember the exact names, but the distinction is between Krishna himself and then the avatars like Balaram, who is Krishna but separate. So that is like, there's an extended degree of separation. And then Krishna in Dwarka and Krishna in Mathura, who is also like, it's very different moods. So it's a different manifestation of Krishna, but there's a difference between Krishna and Dwarka and Balaram. You understand? So it has to do with the levels of separation. And then again, then there's Balaram, which is one thing, Lord Balaram, close but still a separate personality. And then you start having other like the other avatars, like Nrsimhadev, which is then even then a further away from him. So that's to a large part. I can't remember. Do you know what that verse is? Where it is?
27 explains something about that.
Let's see here. Okay, it's two manifestations of Prabhav and Vaibhav. Yeah, so okay, so then the distinction between the Prabhav and the Vaibhav we see here are made in terms of the level of potencies. So the Prabhav are fully potent, like Lord Krishna, and the Vaibhav are partially potent. So we see that avatars like Kurma, Matsya, Varaha, they are Vaibhav. So the Vaibhav manifestations are not they're not the full representation of Krishna's energy. Something like a very specific form, like again, if the Lord appears as a boar, it's limited in the sense that it's not the full manifestation of the Lord. It has the full power and energy of the Lord, but it comes with a very specific purpose. And it's not necessarily such a big development of his full manifestation of the Lord's personality and pastimes. Whereas then the Prabhav features are fully potent, so one could say more complete. So we see here the Prabhav features are probably like Vyasadeva, Dattatreya, Kapila, and then the Vaibhav features we see are more the animal forms, Kurma, Matsya, Nrsimha, Varaha, Hayagriva, Krishnakarbha, so they are more limited manifestations. So not the full manifestations like in the human forms, in the human-like forms like Krishna and Ram, or say here like Vyasadeva, they are more full, and in the other ones it's more limited potency, not the full manifestation of the Lord's full energy, although they are still avatars themselves. But I will, for any further reading, I would suggest if you want to get into this stuff, the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, in there it's much more elaborately described, with a lot of examples also, and then a lot of verses that explain more specifically these avatars. Here, it's more a summary, so the technical details sometimes get a little lost, but in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, it's more explicitly described. And the Ādi-līlā also, yeah. That's true. And the teachings of Sanatana Goswami, I believe.
I also had a similar kind of question. Like here it was written that his incarnations are of two kinds, partial and empowered. But in Bhagavatam there are 6 kinds of incarnation, like Yuga Avataras, Leela Avataras. So like, what was the context of writing only 2 incarnation here and?
Well, the partial incarnations are referring to the amsas are actual parts of the Lord or expansions, and then the Shakti Aveshas are referring to jivas that are then empowered by the Lord's energy. So that's a very big difference. So the angsas are actual expansions of the Lord personally, and then the Shakti Aveshas, they are jivas who are then empowered by the Lord. So again, when it comes to categories can be divided in many different ways. So you can say, oh, there are 2 kinds of incarnations, or you can say there's 6 kinds of incarnations, or you can say there's 4 kinds of incarnations, because it depends on what exactly the category is that you're looking at. So it's not that if they say here, oh, there's 2 kinds of incarnations, and say, oh, but in Bhagavatam it says there are 6 kinds. No, it depends on what kinds. Just like I can say, there are 2 kinds of humans. There's 2 kinds of human beings, male and female. Well, I don't know if you can say that so much anymore, but at some point that's what we said. But then you can also say, oh, but there are 7 kinds of human beings, which is the human beings born in Africa, the ones in North America, the ones in Asia, the ones in Europe. So there's so many different categories that you can use to divide. You can say, oh, there are 2 kinds of human beings. There are engineers and there are non-engineers. There's like 2 kinds of categories, and they're very different. So in the same way, categories can be very different. So when we start looking at these, you have to always keep in mind that they will look at different categories. And this distinction between the Angsa and the Shakti rays has to do with, oh, there's the incarnations that are God Himself, and then there's the incarnations that are jivas who are empowered by God's energy. So that's one kind of way that you can separate them. But there's many different ways that you can divide the incarnations up in different categories, and it's not that one is right and one is wrong. And different texts will be looking at different things, different features in dividing up those categories. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Ajayananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, my question was, sometimes even as devotees, when we hear about something we can do, for example, if someone speaks about, go and distribute books or go and preach, open a center, then it seems very relevant. But when it comes to topics of dependence on Krishna and those more deeper topics, then it becomes a little irrelevant. So my question was, how do we come to the platform of actually we try to depend on Krishna?
Try to depend on Krishna. Well, I would think that those 2 things are quite related. The Pope, once the Pope met a drug addict, and the Pope told the junkie, the Pope said, you will find God. You won't find God in the church. He said, you will find God in your addiction. What does that mean? It means that you will see here is something that is much more powerful than you are. And there you will have to find God. You will have to find the strength of God to help you overcome this addiction. And there you will have to realize that there is a higher power than yourself. Otherwise it's very difficult. So the point is that it is, and when encountering our limitations, it is there that we realize, now I need the mercy of God. I am dependent on God. And we see that therefore humility, that kind of deeper humility, you'll see it usually people who have done great things for God are the people who can oftentimes be very humble because they realize how much they depend on God's mercy. If you really don't do anything for Krishna, then it's much easier to be under the illusion that everything is okay. Because you don't really go to your limits. You don't experience your limits. It looks like the material energy, for people who are very mundane and who never really extend themselves for any kind of other purpose except just doing their own thing, they think that they have everything under control. But if you start really doing something for Krishna, you realize that it is so much not under your control. If you want to start a preaching center in Jersey City and you realize how many things have to come together to have that thing, where are you going to get this, how are you going to get this, then what do? Then you pray and you realize, please Krishna help me, because you realize without Krishna's help, I'm not going to do this. But if your only goal in life is just to eat nicely and just like be peaceful and not really have any problems, then do you really, how much of God, then you think you don't need God. You still actually do, but it's not so present, it's not so in your face. So that's why these two things come together. Like extending ourselves and trying to do something for Krishna forces us to become much deeper. Because now we realize how much we are under Krishna's control. And therefore Prabhupada would show that, Prabhupada said that is the shortcut in seeing God face to face, is in taking risks for God. Because when you take risks, Prabhupada said that if you take risk, you force Krishna to reveal his hand. Because now Krishna says, I will protect you. But if you take big risks, then you force Krishna to personally get involved. And we see in Prabhupada's life, and we see how Prabhupada was so many things, like the Juhu temple. God, what a fight, and no one wanted to fight. No one wanted to do it. Everybody told him it doesn't make sense. Prabhupada says, okay, if none of you, then I will fight alone. Basically, you guys are all just weak. I will fight alone. And at the end, we saw that when Prabhupada got the message that Mr. Nair had died. And then Prabhupada said a prayer, and Prabhupada says, actually, I was praying to Krishna to kill him. Because he can see that if this gentleman, he is going to just fight Prabhupada to the death. But we see that so many points that Prabhupada, Krishna would just happen, the magic would happen. But it happens when you try to extend yourself. So to develop that depth of dependence that you're speaking on Krishna, it's a little tough. Because the material energy naturally makes us think that we are in control. But when we extend ourselves, then we realize how much we depend on Krishna's mercy. But also just life in general also cooks us as well, isn't it? Cooks you as well. And therefore we see that the material world is made that there's always a little pressure on us. So we see in the ashram, there's two kinds of pressure. Almost done. And I'm very afraid of prohibition. If you'll see that you will have two ashrams. And those two ashrams, there's two different kinds of pressures. There's the renounced ashrams, and then there's the married ashram. So again, actually 4 ashrams, but we can say 2. So 2, renounced, non-renounced. In the renounced ashram, the whole society comes together to do what? To relieve you from financial pressure. In the renounced ashram, you don't have to worry about making money to support anyone. But the pressure is on you to do what? To do something for Krishna. To extend yourself for Krishna voluntarily. Voluntarily. You have to extend it. Otherwise, what will happen is your material desires will take you over. And then you won't be able to do it. So in the ashram, even though you're here, technically people sometimes think that. They think, oh, the devotees in the temple, oh, they have life so easy, they don't have to work. It's like, well, you think so. But actually, there's a lot of pressure because in the ashram, your material desires can totally annihilate you. Because in the ashram, you can't work for money, all these things. So the only thing you have to work hard. Otherwise, what will happen is the modes of nature will just drag you down and just like completely ruin you. Because your mind can go down so much. Because now in the ashram, you have to extend yourself to get Krishna's mercy. Otherwise, you will become absorbed in your own desires. Then in household life, what's the pressure? Pressure is money. There you have to pay for yourself, my friend. No donations coming in, there's just you. You have to pay for yourself. And both of those are very powerful forms because in both of these, you will need Krishna's help. And you can see anybody who lives outside, it is tough. And it's tough because the pressure is now on you. Whether you are a business owner or whether you work, there's a lot of pressure in the world outside. And in the ashram, there's also pressure. There's pressure from the temple president who's checking, what are you doing? And there's the pressure of your own self in your heart, of how much are you pushing to do something for Krishna, so that you can stay spiritually connected, so that your material desires don't take you and then throw you in one other direction. So the material world, it's explained when they asked Yudhishthira, what is the most amazing thing? Yudhishthira said the most amazing thing is people think that, they will not die. But in that same dialogue, one of the questions that the yakshas asked, and the yaksha, he asked Yudhishthira, what is this material world? What is this world actually? What is this world? We think of this world as if it's supposed to be Disneyland. That's the conditioned soul thinks that this world is like somewhere that you come to have a vacation. We think that, we come here to enjoy. That's why we come here. But it's not at all what it is actually. Yudhishthira says that this world is actually like a big pot. It's a big pot. And this world is being cooked. and it's being cooked, and this pot is being stirred by the sun and the moon, or like the two ladles that's stirring this pot. And in this way, time is cooking everyone. And how is it? And it's cooking what? It's cooking us. We are being cooked. We are being cooked by the material energy. How does it cook us? By pressure. The pressure of death, the pressure of health, the pressure of money, the pressure of responsibilities. That's what happens in this world. And you have to choose what pressure you want, but that pressure is going to be there. And pressure is going to be there like anything. And that pressure is what will push us to taking more shelter of God. Because we realize that without God's mercy, everything can completely collapse. Now, in industrial society, it's more difficult to see it because we think now, oh, it's about money. It's still about Krishna. If Krishna doesn't want you to have money, you're finished. So many things can happen. You can lose your job. And in the temple, the same thing. If it's not by Krishna's mercy, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be able to just live a life purely for the mission. You're going to live your life, really? You're just going to live for the mission? You don't want to have your own little apartment and make some money and do your own thing just for the mission? You think your mind and your senses are going to allow you to do that without Krishna's mercy? And same thing for the householder. You think you're just going to live outside and be comfortable without Krishna's mercy? And same thing, what to speak of just maintaining yourself, maintaining your spiritual life. You think you're going to just be happy and peaceful and chant Hare Krishna and follow the four regular principles without Krishna's mercy, without doing something to get Krishna's mercy? So those two things are connected. So developing depth, the problem with developing depth is that there's no shortcut. And usually we see people who are very deep are people who have taken a lot of responsibility in Krishna's service, or also it is with time. Sometimes you meet devotees that look very simple, but actually they can be very deep, because time also reveals a lot of lessons to us. And we see it as we get older and we see a lot of difficult things. We get people that are very deep. And I'm going to end with this one story. There's a story of Prabhupada. This was in, I think it was in Hyderabad, when the Prabhupada opened the temple up there. So there was a gentleman who came, and he was an Indian gentleman, older, like 60 something, and he was retired, just normal guy, and somehow he heard Prabhupada speak and he wanted to get initiation, like anything. And then he went, asked the temple president, he says, I want initiation of Prabhupada. But at that time the movement was very heavy, and it was like, to become a devotee means, you have to live in the temple. So they told this devotee, well, if you want to get the initiation, there's rules, and you have to come do so many hours of service and whatever. But that gentleman, he was older, and he had a problem with his leg. He had edema, so his leg was swollen up. So he couldn't really do anything. He couldn't mop floors or do anything. He couldn't move into the temple. And his whole life, he was just a civil service worker. He was working for the railroad or whatever. He was just a normal person. But somehow he had this faith. And then he really wanted initiation, but he realized that he's not going to be able to get it. So then one day he went to this other devotee, who was just a small devotee, someone who was mopping the floor or whatever. And then he asked him, says, you want initiation. How do I get initiation? And this devotee says, Prabhu, I'm just sweep the floor here, I don't have, you have to ask the temple president. He says, no, the temple president, he told me I have to do this, I can't do all this stuff. So then this devotee was thinking, he's like, okay, well, you have to somehow speak to Prabhupada directly. That's going to be the only option. So if you can speak to Prabhupada directly. Then it says Prabhupada will come soon. So you come and you help the devotee make a plan to see if you can go see Prabhupada. It says actually when Prabhupada comes, in the evenings he has darshan and anyone can go. And this man, he was amazed. He's like, anyone can go? You can just go see Prabhupada? He didn't even know you can just go speak to Prabhupada. So the devotee says, yeah, so you come tomorrow, and you come at this time, there will be open darshan, and then you make sure that you're there first, and then you ask Prabhupada directly. And you bring some prasadam, whatever. So then this man said, okay, so he came one day, and he brought a plate with some coconut and gur and whatever, that's what coconut is a big thing there. And then, just when he arrived, then someone came down the stairs and says, okay, darshan is open. If anyone wants to come, darshan is open. So no one else was there. It was much earlier than usual. So then this devotee told this gentleman, he said, go up. Just go up and see Prabhupada. And the man was shaking, he was so afraid, he was so nervous to meet Prabhupada. Then he went up there, and then he went in and he met Prabhupada. And then he gave Prabhupada the laddu, whatever. And then this man, he was so nervous, he didn't know what to say. And then he looked at Prabhupada and says, Swamiji, this is like his big moment. It's a big moment, now you can ask. He said, Swamiji, I want to chant Hare Krishna. So he just, he didn't ask for it, he was just saying, I want to just chant Hare Krishna, that's what I want to do. So Prabhupada said, you want to chant? Prabhupada says, you're chanting? He says, Prabhupada says, okay, you want to chant every day? He said, yes. And Prabhupada says, you have beads? And then the man, he showed his beads because the devotee had given him beads. Then Prabhupada took out his beads. And that man, he said, you take your beads. And then Prabhupada chanted. I think they chanted like 16 rounds or something, like a lot of rounds. Prabhupada chanted like a whole round or 2 rounds, I don't know, but they chanted quite a bit. They chanted a whole round, yeah. Prabhupada chanted the whole round with him. And then Prabhupada gave him the beads back. And they said, now you chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, you never stop. Just never stop, you just keep chanting. So he practically initiated the man. And then a few years, I don't know how long later, not much longer later, then the devotee who had helped that gentleman, he found out that that man had left his body. Yeah? Not just a few months later. But they said that man, he was like chanting like anything. And even at the point of, he had those beads with him, and it says they couldn't keep, until the time that man died, he was not letting that beads go even for a minute. Yeah? So that man had so much, even though ordinary, but we see that so much extraordinary dependency is developed on Krishna. But also just by time, just by the pressure of life and seeing that your body is failing. So the point is that depth is something that can come to us if we take shelter, but it is difficult to get it, but we see it in people that are really forced to take shelter of Krishna. And when we take risks for Krishna, we're forced to do that, but even just by time, if we really stick it out, then also the material energy brings us to the point of being dependent on Krishna. And at the end, all of us will have that experience. My Guru Maharaj always used to say that it's like very difficult to make spiritual advancement, like you're really struggling hard, but at the end of life, it says, sure, you can make, your spiritual advancement can be very much exceeded very quickly. Because at that point, all this other stuff falls away, all the distractions and all these other things. And I saw it with my father as well. My father, it was difficult Krishna conscious, but at the end of life, he had cancer and he was in his wheelchair. And then he started to chant Hare Krishna. And then my mother made him a little bead bag and he would chant these rounds, because then there was nothing left. Everything got taken away. So depth, it's a little difficult to just make artificially, but either by time or by personal endeavor, we'll be able to do it, but encountering our limitations is a key factor in developing depth. And just doing it on the basis of philosophy or understanding is actually a little tough. It's the material energy and the life that pushes us in that direction. Okay, we will end here. Grantaraj Shri Caitanya-caritāmṛta ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premanande.